Afternoon, audience. Menu curation, they say, is the secret weapon behind the success of many, many QSRs. The consistency with which it is offered, the sheer range of what is on offer for customers, and perhaps the uniqueness in taste is what sets apart, stalwarts like yourselves versus many, many also ran brands. To talk more about this, of course, we have a very, very eclectic panel. And I would request each of the panelists to first introduce themselves very briefly and their business before we really, get talking more about the subject. So maybe we'll start with you, Harpreet.
Hi, so my name is Harpreet Singh Tibb. So Tibb, obviously, you know that we have a chain called Tibbs Frankie. It's a chain which has been there for the last 55 years. And we're very happy serving 100% freshly prepared gravilicious rolls, all made with Indian spices and gravies to each one of you every day. Yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Myself, Saurabh, I joined McDonald's back in 2001-2, and since that time in the restaurants from catering college, and since that time doing a lot of roles in the business, and finally managing director of the company I've been working ever.
Super.
Hi, this is Dheeraj. I run Jumboking, and I was just telling Saurabh, it's an honor to be sitting next to him. We learn from them and we implement in the field.
I think the pivot was because of that. Hi guys, this is Ankit here. I run a company called the Belgian Waffle Co. We are a young company, been around for 9 years, have 620 outlets across 190 odd cities in India. Yeah, that's a little about me.
Amir.
Hello everyone, I'm Amir Majali. We're a much newer, much smaller company than the rest of these distinguished gentlemen. We do Lebanese, authentic Lebanese food. We've started out here in Bombay and are now up to 7 outlets, and hopefully we'll see you all soon and all the rest of the Indian states as soon as possible.
Wonderful. Ankit, let me start with you. For somebody who's teaching India what waffles are and really making waffles a household name, I think the business has come a long way. But in the context of your business, which as a product is inherently European, what does fusion really mean for your business?
The one thing we've learned over the years is that Western concepts work in the country. And so waffles was an inspiration which largely came from Europe. But you have to improvise on the format, you have to improvise on the product. It was largely a mainstay, breakfast item. People who normally have it with honey, maple, with a fork and spoon. So when we were thinking about this, and of course, it was all about experimenting, we thought there could be an opportunity there. We ourselves didn't know in 9 years where we would come. But we took waffles, innovated on the product, made it a little crunchier because Indians normally like crunch. We knew honey and maple are very boring. We know that India is a sucker for sweets. So we thought about various kinds of different chocolate spreads to use. And so we innovated on that and we said, let's use different chocolate spreads, let's mix and match different combinations to see, if it can really connect with the masses. To top it up, Indians, again, like various kinds of add-ons. So we made it like we added Kit Kat, we added Oreo, we added, Lotus Biscoff now. So over a period of time, we kept innovating on a bunch of these things because, when I was a child, when I was in school, we all used to love Sundays. And, we used to love that it's not only an ice cream, there is a whole host of things that really goes in it. And so that's how, we took inspiration and turned something which was more a breakfast item and made it truly Indianized. Someone may still think, honestly, we've actually worked on some Indian flavors also. So recently, I think a year back, we did a Son Papdi shake because Son Papdi really connects with the Indian masses. We did a Royal Rose Almond, which had gulkan and the pan flavor because, again, pan connects with the Indian masses. So we kind of do some of these traditional variants, but what we've realized is that chocolate just sells in the country. India has a big, big sweet tooth, and so, we've taken it from a breakfast item with just honey and maple and did all kinds of mix and match to actually truly Indianize the product.
Wonderful. India loves crisp, is what you just mentioned. Saurabh, would that be the inspiration for your new range of products?
Oh, absolutely. The McCrispy, absolutely. I think crunch is one of the attributes which Indians appreciate a lot. I think spice is another thing which Indians appreciate a lot. And the third thing is actually flavors. We've got very unique flavors in the country, and I think all of those are very, very well appreciated by the consumer. I was speaking in the morning also, actually. I talked about if you really want to think about fusion, then there are 3 layers of fusion. The layer number 1 is what is relevant, because some population is vegetarian, some population non-vegetarian. So what do you want to sell? At McDonald's, if you want to be a mass brand, or any brand which becomes a mass brand, has to be relevant to largest possible audiences. So the first thing is, if you look at our menu, we sell what sells or what is eaten in people's household, which is essentially chicken and fish. There's no red meat eaten in India per capita, so we don't do any of that. Then if you look at it, the veggies, potato is the big winner. We serve potato. If you look at paneer, a big winner again on the vegetarian side, we serve paneer. So if you think about it, both of them were telling me that we are Indian companies, and I don't know why we are not Indian, right? Because if you look at McDonald's globally, we are known for beef. We are known for beef. In India, when we started, we could not do any beef, and obviously we have not done beef because of relevance. We had to create an absolute relevant menu for this country, and this menu is absolutely unique. And the second layer is cultural. I think cultural layer is people didn't eat bread at that point in time. Obviously, it's McDonald's burger. While we let go of beef, we still had to teach people how to eat burgers. So the other job we had to do was around eating of buns. I think we've experimented a lot to be culturally relevant. Whole wheat bun was an example. Millet bun recently launched was another example of how do you remain culturally relevant. The third portion of it is the taste nuance. I think the Makalu Tikki, everybody knows where it got its inspiration from. Actually, 3 products. If I was to tell you in this room, the initial 3 products, when we started thinking about cracking open the Indian market from a snacking standpoint, we saw that there was a lot of sales of this aloo tikki in north, vada pav in west. Then there was similar kind of stuff happening on anda pav. And there was another thing which was samosa. These were 3 big ones, right? And hang on, we had our own twist on it, and there was pizza puff, the Makalu Tikki burger, and the Makek burger. And we added a chicken magrill on top of it. That's when we started our real journey of cracking open the Indian market. And from that time onwards, I think we've only evolved from there. A lot of learning from a consumer standpoint. But to me, fusion is an important part if you want to crack open Indian market, because of the top level contextuality of relevance is very different from anywhere else in the world. So I would like to believe we are more Indian than any Indian company given the menu we've created. So.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Harpreet, coming to you, I mean, you are in a category which is as Indian as it gets, right? For you, what would that mean? What would fusion really mean? Would it mean, taking some European sauces or Chinese sauces and bunging it into your products, or would it mean something completely different?
So I think, very clearly, very interestingly, when we started 55 years ago, our first 3 recipes were classic mutton, classic chicken, and classic veg. Home flavors, it was all prepared in the kitchen. And if you see today, while these contribute, more than half of business even today, and we've actually got a Chinese range, right? So we've actually got a Szechuan, a chili, and a Manchurian. And these have been developed in a way that we can actually yet add the Frankie masala on top of that. So we made sure that the iconic Frankie taste does not get compromised. So we've done that, right? We've now picked up saying that South India basically loves chettinad. So if we go to south of India, we'll have a chettinad flavor coming from our side. We've done a shawarma in some markets. So that's for us is fusion is all about understanding what is local and how do you take advantage of it. We've seen a lot of conversation around plant protein. So again, on plant protein, we said, okay, fine, let's get the plant protein in. And then how do you give the Indian twist to it? And we created a range of Indian recipes. So for me, fusion is not about, doing senseless stuff. Fusion is all about saying what is the brand's POV on its product innovation strategy. And once you're clear about saying what are the guardrails, is then about saying what can I do within those guardrails to get the whole piece moving. Today we're also exploring international flavors. When we are saying, okay, what can we get in there because consumers want something international. So for us, now we're working on that. However, everything has to be bound together by the whole taste element that is very true to the Tibbs Frankie brand. And that's what fusion is for me. As long as you create something which appeals consumers and which actually gets money into the bank, I think it's a great strategy too.
Absolutely. Dheeraj, would your view be any different, or would you like to add something?
Can we introduce him? Mohit, I think we have another panelist who just joined us last.
Hi, Gaurav. Maybe you can begin by introducing yourself and...
Sure, sorry for the delay. My name is Gaurav Batra. I represent Palate Hospitality. We're into luxury dining. We have 3 brands, Numa, 18 Commune, and Pin Code.
Maybe you can hold the mic.
Pin Code, yes. And Pin Code. And I'm here to kind of offer our view in terms of what fusion and flavors, what innovations and which path we've chosen to take in the last few years based on the market and the consumer expectations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I think a lot has been said, adding that, the price points are very, very important. While going on with fusion, you can really go overboard and have a lot of expensive products coming in. So we had this unique challenge because Jumboking is 100% vegetarian, right? So when we sat with the team, we said we need 7 vegetarian burgers. It was not heard of because burger by itself to begin with, the first customer feedback that one of the ladies said is, "Bhai, burger hai to vegetarian kaise ho sakta hai?" And we had the challenge of coming up with 7 vegetarian burgers, right? So we sat with the team and we said because I think we said, okay, let us look at ingredients. Let us take pasta, let us take paneer, let us take potato, let us take vegetables. So we had to literally go with the core of the patty that we'll introduce and then put a very nice sauce flavor to top up over there. And I think we are very blessed with having amazing teams like the entire R&D team, NPD team at Vista, the entire NPD team at Cremica. There are such, brilliant minds working over there. And so it becomes a fun process because I'll share an example. Like when we had to do we actually were the ones who were shown this cheese burst kind of a burger first. And it was too expensive. We couldn't do it. Of course, McDonald's did a fantastic job of launching it. And, today we also benefit. So how innovation happened was we told them that we need cheese. It's a vegetarian filling, only cheese in the patty. And हमको pizza wala pull chahiye, right? When the person will eat the product. So the team came up with 5 samples, not 1. And they said this is 100% processed, 100% cheddar, and the other one was 50-50 of both. And they said we cannot do this because after we fry it, it will be very flowy and the liquid will move to one side. The patty will look hollow. The other one, they kind of explained to us why each of the products will have, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and they told us we should not do any of them, right, because it will not work. And then it was Sevencia, another company which actually cracked, because they had the equipment to make the product. So even today, Vista does not do a cheese patty, it comes from Sevencia.
Fantastic. When you do so many new products, and especially if you're trying to crack open the market, like one of you mentioned earlier, amongst all the successes that you guys would have had, there also would have been some failures, right? So talk us through that. If anyone wants to take the lead, please feel free.
I can. So I'm an Indian at heart, right? So we are an Indian. So actually, I'll go tell my marketing team that we are doing a good job because we want to promote Jumboking as the Indian burger, right? So we wanted to add, at that time we said, why can't we have a black dal burger? As you know, instead of a sauce, we'll actually pour black dal on the product. And I loved the product. Every time I'd go to the store, I'd have it, but none of the customers, unfortunately, ever touched it. They said, ये क्या बकवास है? कि थोड़ा सा चल गया तो आप लोग कुछ भी करने लग गए हो. Black dal burger, it did not fly at all. And so in fact, there is a joke in our team. Whenever I like a product, they say, ये पक्का नहीं launch करना है because it might not do well in the market. So
I think it was, for us, it was rice. I think we went a little bit in order to crack open South, and all these consumer researchers tell you South rice is very, very critical alongside chicken. You just have to do rice. And we did 3-4 variants of rice. We were at it for 3 years. When we actually realized, we got to win on the plate of what we do. I don't think we can win by becoming somebody else. And that was an important learning. I think we've kept it to ourselves. The other thing which is very, very clear is there is a market for global flavors, global fusion on the top levels, and Indian fusion at the bottom level. So those are things I think we learned by doing a lot of experiments and failing dramatically. Rice, I would never say never, but for now I would be staying away from rice. From the last 5 years, we haven't touched any rice project, and I've told my chef, rice is not coming to me for sure. So that's one of the things which happens.
So, we talk about fusion, and now, we spoke about waffles and how we wanted to be a destination for desserts and known for desserts. But back in 2018-19, you talk about all these popular flavors. So we had something called the pizza waffle, because again, pizza connects a chord with the Indian masses. And so, we thought we'll do something where we create a different kind of a waffle base and then have certain sauces and stuff like that. Execution aside, because eventually it boils down to execution. I just think that brands eventually stand for something, and the key is that your product basket needs to be etched in the consumer's mind. And so if you want to be a dessert destination and you want to be a mainstay waffle destination as a credible alternative to your traditional desserts, then it's not advisable to probably deviate into a savory range, because it just doesn't connect with the masses. There's a brand disconnect there itself, which honestly, when I think about it and what Saurabh just said, because when I think McDonald's, I think burgers. When I think Jumboking, I think burgers. I don't think about rice, or I don't think about biryani.
There's a special one coming your way from Dheeraj. So
Yeah, so that's been one of our learnings. So we largely keep our core true to the entire dessert range rather than deviating into the savory side of things. That's been our learning.
sure. Amir, you've been rather quiet. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your journey and the fact that you're selling falafels, which is not necessarily a very Indian category. Your challenges would be very, very different from the rest of them, whose categories are now reasonably well known in the country.
So absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit about a cuisine's kind of life cycle when it first starts in a country and it's completely new. We'll stick to Middle Eastern cuisine because that's where we're from, at least. I think fusion kind of comes in the beginning and in the end. When you first introduce a new cuisine into a country where nobody knows it, the chances are it will be a highly fusion product, and it will start by an inspiration, let's say, from that particular cuisine, but it will be highly local in terms of its delivery in the end. So we all know with Middle Eastern food, the people who started the legendary inspiration for that were, of course, our Tibbs, the legendary Tibbs. They started off with the first Frankie, which was an inspiration from Lebanese cuisine, and that's how it started, and it was a highly fusion product. The more that goes on, and as time goes on, people will start to innovate, and they would innovate, in my opinion, in a certain direction towards authenticity. They would like to have the product as it is in that country of origin. And so you see a drive with at least the restaurants in the industry trying to become more authentic and trying to serve that single cuisine product. For example, I believe Japanese food in Mumbai now is going through this period where you see a lot of Japanese restaurants. For other Asian food, East Asian food, for example, it's still in its nascency. So you see a lot of Pan-Asian restaurants, and therefore you see a lot of fusion over there. But then, when there's a lot of authentic restaurants, then you need to innovate. And how do you innovate and how do you stand out? You start by being fusion. So for example, the concept of sushi, vegetarian sushi at least, does not exist outside India. This is a highly innovative product that's been launched in the market, and it's doing fantastic. I would argue even better than real sushi. So there's a time and a place for fusion, and there's a lot of innovation involved in that. We at TruFalafel, we try to be as authentic as possible because that's our USP. But if you want to succeed in the market, as Dheeraj and Saurabh were saying, you need to cater to the local palate. So we've had our attempts and we've had our failures and successes. For example, we are trying to do a paneer shawarma. That's failed miserably. We are unable to make paneer taste Middle Eastern, and therefore that's not working out for now. We are trying a chicken shawarma kapsa, trying to Indianize that as much as possible, but again, rice is not working out either. We are doing a curry leaf hummus. That's been working out. So curry leaf fused really well inside a hummus, and if you have that good texture that you have from the Middle East with the bold flavors of curry, it works. So fusion has its time and place, and it needs proper innovation, but when it hits, it really does.
Fantastic. Gaurav, coming to you, I mean, you are someone who's running, top-notch restaurants. For you, fusion food would be possibly the reason why people are coming to you, right?
Yeah, so actually, the segment that we are in, fusion became a bad word very early on because these people were the initial well-traveled bunch who've seen the world and they want to come back to India and bring the same flavors onto their plate. So we took the strategy of focusing on the ingredients. So for us, literally, we turned avocado into the new aloo. It's there in all our cuisines because Indians are adapting to it, right? And
I haven't heard a better line about avocado.
for like, I mean, across all three of our brands. So Numa is where we focus on global flavors. We don't call it fusion because the purists come and attack us. So we say, okay, chef-inspired global flavors, European techniques, but whatever. When we look at pin code, it is how to make Indian food sexy again. Because to a generation of 20-year-olds, Indian food is now secondary because they are aspiring towards international cuisine. So there we bring the international ingredients into Indian food. Your truffle naans and you have your avocado bhel and things like that. When it comes to 1-8 Commune, which is basically a sports-driven brand, the idea, we kept it multi-cuisine. And in the multi-cuisine, we're saying this is the classic the way it is because you're coming for that. But within that classic, they're going to compare us to the next guy. So, for example, if you do a burger, I mean, we have to do a better burger than the other guy. And therefore, the chef will introduce some touch of, oh, this is Asian, so I'm going to go the Korean way, or this is, Japanese, I'm going to try some wasabi on this. So, Indians are now looking at flavors in that segment. They are hungry, they are aspiring, they wanted to come to, but they want flavorful. I'm not able to find that yet. Subtle flavors is not a thing. So chef can create what he wants, but if it's coming
like subtle flavors by and large.
not
We like
at
our
all. I
flavors
mean,
bold.
they want what we call the sweet, salt, and vinegar in the same dish, and chatpata, and then even if it's avocado, the new aloo.
Yeah.
So we find that yes, in a country which is hungry, people are traveling a lot more. There is and they're just getting exposed. They've just tasted blood, so they want all that. They want the ingredients here. But when it comes to the flavor, somewhere at the back of the mind has got to be a heavy flavor, which is why Pan-Asian has taken on growing very rapidly at the expense of other cuisines in this country. So I think that it's a reversible path and process. The more aspirational we get and the more middle-class consumers are added to the consuming pool, you're going to find that the innovation in products, in ingredients, in cooking techniques is going to become more and more significant. That's our take. Sure.
I just want to understand the mindset behind the curation of fusion products. For instance, do you guys look at it from the perspective of the consumer set that is coming to you and say that, okay, I want maybe a certain kind of consumer who's possibly not coming to us, and therefore I need to curate a set of products? For example, to borrow from what Saurabh said, rice, they wanted to crack open the South market. And they saw in that an opportunity to cater specifically to a South Indian audience. Is that the kind of mindset that most of you have when you're curating new products?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's as simple as that to be able to say I launch a new product and new customers will come. I don't think it works like this. I think one of the things you need to identify is who you are. I think that was a point made earlier. I think the fusion, I don't know what the word fusion actually means. It means inspiration, right? If you look at the ingredients of pita and hummus, they're not too different from kulcha and chole, right? But that's not kulcha, chole, it's still hummus and pita. Now to me, there is that part of the first level which is cultural relevance already inbuilt, and some flavors which remind you. Now the cost is what can you do it repeatedly, consistently, because at the end, food is memory. If you can create long-term memory, brands like McDonald's are successful, and because we take a lot of pride in delivering a consistent taste year after year after year, right? There is scope for experimenting, but you got to have your core of who you are, and that taste is actually what defines over a long term, because taste is memory. I think in the morning, Chef Gill was talking about the same thing. Taste is memory, and if you are able to get it, I think that's the simplest formula to be successful. Who you are is your core. That got to be consistent day after day, year after year, and then you experiment to be able to be relevant on new
So
occasions.
essentially your experimentation is to please the same audience that is coming to you already and prevent them from going away,
Largely,
right?
largely, absolutely.
And would that be the case for everyone?
No, so for us,
I mean, I can already see Ankit kind of not being very comfortable.
So we also look at day parts. Like for us, breakfast is a very big segment which is completely untapped. We don't have a strong breakfast menu. So we in fact went back to the Vista team and we said, that you have those tall katori idli kind of things. We said, hey, why don't you make that in rice, cut it in 2/3, 1/3, and then it becomes like a burger, right? The crown and the base, and then we will add, something. Either we add some chutney over there, or we will add some patty over there, and let's see if we can introduce that for breakfast. So if McDonald's does it, we are always very happy because we can. They build the market and we collect the crumbs. So, so I think it was a great product idea, but the wrapper, it would get stuck to the wrapper because the idli would need steaming. So, but so we are actually thinking day parts. Hey, how can we get sticking to the burger category, get people to have breakfast with us?
I think breakfast, the other issue with category like breakfast, McDonald's has a breakfast menu, but I don't think it's a pickup menu because the price of pickup in India is less than $50. It's very difficult to crack that. One, breakfast on its own is a small category. Of the total eat out, breakfast was less than 5%, the last I remember. In that, the spending which people do is not more than $50 per person. That's too low for brands like us and even Dheeraj to be able to break open that kind of, but that would be something which would obviously fascinate at some point in time. I think more people will join and say we need to open breakfast because that's an untapped area versus the other parts of the world. That India breakfast consumption is the lowest and dinner is the highest. Actually, it's absolutely the other way around in the Western worlds. And it's actually better for lifestyle also that you eat out on breakfast and dinner you eat the lightest food possible. We don't do that as Indians, but to me, at some point in time it will happen. But a lot of things have to change outside for us to be able to stop.
So have none of you ever used, and the question is for anybody who wishes to answer, have none of you ever used a new product to attract an audience set that is not coming to you?
Sure. So I think, we tried this a couple of years back. We realized, as people said, rolls is actually an on-the-go category. It's actually a snack at its best. And we realized that most of the time, if you look across day parts, we realized that we didn't have anything heavy, which will manage to attract someone during lunch and someone during dinner. So we said, what can we actually expand as part of the menu to be able to attract that crowd? And bingo, I think we all know the most delivered item is biryani. So we actually then decided to venture into biryani. And using the same principle, we actually launched biryani. We knew that if people thought of Tibbs, Frankie, it's always going to be a roll. So we actually launched something called Tibbs Biryani Da Tadka. So very different brand. Principles being same, it comes from the house of Tibbs. It's all about flavor, great tasting flavors. And we actually launched that, primarily to actually attract people at a very different day part, which is dinner and lunch. So that's an experiment we've done.
Yeah, just to add, I think your core should be good enough to cater and bring in audiences. I think you can always expand core. For McDonald's, coffee happened to be such core. Right. But the logic of that was that we want this category to build. The daily experiments of limited time offers are not necessarily to bring in hordes of customers. They might be to bring back the lapsers, but the core should be able to give you the first instance of a customer. If you're not able to do it as a brand, then there is an issue with the core menu, and you need to start thinking again about what's my core menu really.
Just to add to what Saurabh just said, so in fact, from our business standpoint also, certain concepts or products that we have developed actually have been with the intent of probably catering to a different audience. So for example, our current batter that we use is of course maida. And then we started with something called an almond flour batter. Now, we've normally seen that people who are upwards of the age of 35 and all, that kind of a product portfolio and that kind of a batter really connects with them. Because otherwise, we are relatively catering to a much younger audience. So we innovated and we developed this only with the intent that, probably the ones who are 35 plus tend to get a little more conscious about the calories that they're consuming, and then this kind of a product basket connects with them. There's another product that flavors that we had launched, which were the less sweet chocolate spreads, and that's where it had bombed completely. Because again, in India, the idea of health is not where the wealth is, because people want to indulge, they'll consume a little less if required. So that didn't work, but the almond flour really connects well with a much older audience. So like Saurabh said, your core needs to be true, and then you improvise to probably connect with a different audience altogether.
Fantastic. Gaurav, you've been trying to
Yeah,
say
so
something.
what we are noticing is that, well, of course, we are very strong on flavor and we want it on everything. But a newer, younger consumer is also very conscious of nutrition and much more aware. So when we create a menu, they ask questions. What's the calorie count? What's the content? And you're supposed to have the answers as per law to begin with, but more importantly also out of ethics. So what we're realizing, the older consumer, because they're more set, they are paying lip service to health and nutrition now, but the thing is that they are also more set in their ways. The younger consumer, who's every year a segment of 25-year-olds with their income, is coming into the market and becoming a client, and they are increasingly more and more focusing on the nutrition aspect as well, in addition to justifying the flavors. So it's even for a niche brand like us, or for a brand which is very scalable like the rest, I think somewhere in the future, this has to be blended, because your innovation has to be targeting the new consumer, because they're going to take over the market in the next few years. You're not designing for the existing ones. The existing ones you manage.
From the perspective of pricing, or from the perspective of promotion specifically, and when I say promotion, I'm not talking about discounting, I'm talking about communication. And when you guys create a new product, a fusion product, how do you look at it from the perspective of pricing, from the perspective of promotion, etc., just to understand the process a little better?
Sure, I can take a go at it. So, very clearly, I think at the end of the day, it all starts by understanding your consumer. We've just launched something called Proti Roti, which is a 100% plant protein-based roll. And very clearly, it started by looking at saying a lot of health-conscious seekers out there, a lot of people who believe that we want more protein in the diet. So we went and actually did a lot of concepts around it. And we used different kinds of words saying plant food. We spoke about saying, people said it's not meat, go meatless. And we realized that people said, listen, why don't we talk about what its actually benefit is? And the benefit turned out to be protein. So what we did is we actually created a whole new category of rolls, which is actually called Proti Roti. So menu, in fact, now has something called veg, non-veg, and Proti Roti. With this simple trick, what happened is now consumers know very clearly it's a completely differentiated benefit. And that actually, by locking the benefit in the name itself, we're able to communicate, the whole angle of promotion.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. But would you price these products at a premium?
You're absolutely right.
Or would you price it at the same level as the existing products?
So I think, Mohit, it all boils down to saying what's the value for money that you want to give, right? So I think all these consumers that we spoke to, they said, if you're giving me an added benefit of protein, I'm happy to pay a premium. So we've actually then done pricing study where it said what can be the price premium we can command. And we then actually went and plonked the launch of this entire thing with that kind of a price premium. So I guess very clearly pricing is all led by, what's the value providing and what's the cash you can bring into the bank. And I think that's the approach we at least use when you're thinking of the entire marketing mix.
Anybody with a different view?
So not really a different view, but whenever we've done certain product launches, like when we launched ice cream sundaes, I think we do a lot of in-store display of collaterals. We do a lot of, Vrishali sitting here, she leads marketing for us. So she does a great job in terms of, performance marketing. And we tend to run a certain campaign, especially if it's a product or a category introduction. Because, in addition to waffles, people need to then start realizing that, the brand also has certain new categories to offer. So that's when, we do a lot more interventions to create a lot of awareness. And we typically tend to run this for a month or 2 months at least, so that, it etches in the people's mind that there's a new category introduction and the brand has to offer that. And of course, sometimes, the price points really work for the Indian consumers. So you should ideally look to discount some of these products as opposed to what their regular MRP is going to be, which then tends to induce trials. And that's how, people will become more and more aware of new categories that you're introducing as a brand. So at least that's what we've done in the past.
Sure.
I think there is not a set rule of how will you price. I think what's important is what are your objectives with a particular product. that defines what happens. Largely, as a rule of thumb, I think Indian flavors, we have always kept it at the entry level. Global flavors, we've generally charged more. But there are exceptions to the rules. For example, when we did the makalu tikki and our makalu tikki and filet of fish are probably the two products which, in terms of nutrition, meet the guideline of National Institute of Nutrition. I don't think too many burgers can make that claim. So while makalu tikki is still an entry-level product, we don't talk about it because we know that in the minds of the consumers, they will not pay extra for makalu tikki for this, right? And some of them might stop eating it because they're not eating outside the burger for health, right? Yeah. So to me, it really what is about the objective on pricing, what is the objective? Sometimes when you do a limited time offering, your limited time offering is to make sure there is engagement and you make a little bit extra buck out of it, then you will price it a little lucrative. So that's how it goes.
Sure.
As in two things that we do to communicate new products, right? So we have, this thing has really worked well for us. We have something called the JK of the day, the Jumboking of the day. And so when we introduce a product, so we have this menu discipline that, all the international QSR chains follow, and we've learned from them that, so we only play with 7 burgers. That's it. Our entire menu is that. So by default, every 3 to 6 months, a new product gets added, and one which is not performing is removed. So the JK of the day ensures that every new coming product gets promoted on that particular day where a lot of trials happen, and if people like it, then they consume it. And of course, now we also have we also spend a lot of time and money and, launch a loyalty program. So we have got close to 1.5 million people on that loyalty program. So that tech really helps to communicate new products which are there in our system.
My final question, gentlemen, when you do work on a new product, and it's a fusion product, it's not necessarily a true blue European or a true blue Indian product, etc. Would you launch it across your outlets? Would you launch it across, your entire portfolio of stores, or would it be limited to a few stores?
I think it has to go viral. It has to go blue. You have to flood it and communicate it because social media is non-discriminatory. When you promote the item on your social media handles, all your consumers are getting a go at it and they want it. So why be apologetic? You kind of take it out there, but you may control.
If you're sure about it, then why not?
Yeah, but you will control the portions of that. For example, if it's a veg-heavy market and it's a non-veg product, you might not push it that aggressively in store, but the consumer knows about it. Social media has kind of changed the way we receive and process our understanding of food and products. So people are aware, they know about it. Now, how willing they are to try it depends on how compelling your message is.
So, honestly, given that we have a presence across 200 cities and more than 600 plus outlets, we do it more on the pilot phase, probably in a limited number of stores or in a particular city, test out the concept, test out the entire SOPs, test out the processes, test out our supply chain, and only when we are confident that everything's working fine and there is some level of adoption is when we try to go national. Because launching and pulling back a product is a much bigger headache than running these pilots, testing it out, and then knowing what you're getting into.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I tend to agree with what he just said. At the end of the day, launching an innovation takes a lot of effort, time, and if you really go wide, before you really know the flavor is going to succeed, we typically do something called pilot stores, and rather than doing, consumer research by going to people's homes or catching them somewhere outside, we do live consumer research. We launch in a few stores. We learn in terms of how the flavors are responding, and if we find a winner, we then actually go ahead and put the full muscle power behind it. So that's the approach at least we take.
Amir, any thoughts?
So I just wanted to remark that in terms of fusion food, I think in every industry there's the potential for fusion food to do great, and there's a time and a place for it, as I mentioned earlier. Currently, TruFalafel is seeking, our USP is being authentic food, and that kind of limits our ability to launch some fusion products because compared to with our competitors, people come to us in particular because they want to have the authentic experience. So it limits a little bit how far we can go. However, when fusion food is done properly, it can launch an entire new cuisine. So obviously, we all know an example that we're all familiar with is Chindi food, which is neither Chinese nor Indian. It's a whole new cuisine, and it's taken at least India, 1.5 billion people by storm, and I can see that expanding to other places in the world. If you look at, for example, Tex-Mex food, I would argue it's now more famous than American food and Mexican food together. So fusion, when done properly, can create whole new cuisines, and those cuisines start at the life cycle from the beginning. They become authentic Tex-Mex, and then slowly you start to innovate within that, and then that becomes a whole new cuisine, and you can develop from that as well. But it just depends, like all the gentlemen have been saying, on on an individual level, where you are as a company. What is your core product? Make sure you know that really well, you stick to it. All these fusion products can be mechanisms to innovate as an add-on, but your core should be well defined. People need to come to you. Let's say they come to me because I'm authentic. They come to Ankit because they want a Belgian waffle, a dessert, a Western dessert. Everybody knows their core audience and their values. I think fusion in our cases is the outlier, so to speak.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, that brings us to an end of this discussion. Thank you very much for your views. Thank you, audience.